Bushiroad did a major oopsie. I'm Mr. Timeleap, and this is Cardfight Update.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to an emergency Cardfight update as we've got a major thing spoiled today, as we apparently got the leaks of the last two VRs of Inffinideity Cradle. So on first glance, when this leak was promoted did the rounds around Facebook, I was a bit skeptical as we've got the images of the VRs, but not the normal VRs. We got the SVR images with the English skill on top of them. So I was honestly skeptical if these leaks were real, as we've seen other people make fake cards like this before, and so I was confused if this was actual leak or just somebody pulling a prank. And also the skill was kind of weird. The grammar skill on the Ancient Feather one was a little bit awkward in terms of how Bushiroad usually writes their skills, so I was presuming this was to be a fake leak and didn't want to make a video about it a couple of hours ago. That was basically midnight for me, but then apparently the news came around where the information came from, because it was originally leaked by Ideal 808, and that is an American seller. So it's weird that an American seller was the one that leaked this potential information. But the information came from the English slides from their weekly bits information reveals. And these, for anybody that doesn't know what weekly bytes means, it's basically the English translation data sheets that we get in the Japanese live stream each Tuesday. So the information that we get on a live stream, those images, those are translated and then put onto the English side of the Bushiroad website in the form of the weekly bytes. And that's usually on Thursday or Friday. And apparently the image slide where we got all the SVRs with Hanzo and Godhand revealed with their skill, we also got the one for Genesis and Angel Feathers with a black box on top of them that stated secret. Well, apparently you can manipulate that image and you can move everything on that to separate direction. So you can move the black box, or better, you can remove the card from underneath the black box and you see the skill underneath it. So that is apparently how we've got the leak of the VR. So with that as a source, I think this is a credible information and we can assume that these are the actual VRs. So I think there's things we need to talk about, because if these skills are real, I'm honestly kind of disappointed in the Genesis VR as it's very linear. However, the Angel Feather one I was also quite disappointed about, but once I took a better look at it, there's actually some interesting things about it. So let's dive right into the card reveals, as for anybody that hasn't seen the leaks, so you're up to date what has been leaked in our community. So first off, let's take a look at the VR for Genesis. That is Quaking Heavenly Dragon Asteroids Dragon, and it got 3 skills. Its first one is continuous on Vanguard Circle. If your Vanguard has 5 or more force markers, your back row rearguard circle becomes a astral plane. So this is something we all basically anticipated, that it had the same skill as Uranus, meaning that if you run this and Uranus, all your grade 3 rides would be a ride that allowed you to generate the astral plane. So you will always have access to that mechanic in the game. That's very logical that they gave the VR this skill as well. Then we get the unique skills, and that's this first one is Act on Vanguard Circle. Once per turn, cost counter +1, get an imaginary gift force, and put that marker on your Vanguard Circle. So every single turn you can pay 1 counterblast and generate a force marker. That's actually pretty decent, as it allows you to do it faster and consistent. In some case cheaper, as Uranus was a Soul Blast too. So a 1 counterblast can be a lot cheaper. However, Genesis isn't really a clan that has a lot of counterchargers, because in this set they finally will get a countercharger, but it does cost quite amount of souls. So if you combine it with Uranus, the question is, how long can you sustain that countercharge? So depending on how your build will function, can mean if the 1 counterblast is cheaper or more expensive than 2 soul blasts. But because we now have different costs for the same effect, you can match and have more flexibility in how you want to use your resources. So that's a plus. Then we have the third skill, and that's Act on Vanguard Circle. Once per turn, if your astral plane has a unit, cast Soul Blast 1 and draw a card. So basically, if you have your Valkyrian in the back row on that thing, you can Soul Blast 1 and draw 1 card. So that's where you use your resources. Overall, it's actually a very generic card, because it does the same thing as the Trial Deck grade for Uranus, but also the other things that allows you to advance your mechanic it's not really something revolutionary that we have seen with the other rearguard supports. Yes, it generates extra force markers. Yes, it has an extra draw on top of it. So once you are at your final stage, where you actually are going to finish the game at that point, then you get some extra draws. I don't think that that's the point where you actually care for the draws. So I'm curious of why it's at that point that you can then pay Soul Blast to draw a card. It doesn't just with the mechanic as the Astral Plane unit will put them into the Soul, so you have the Soul Father for it. But usually it's the early point before you go into the thing that you need all the draw to have more consistency to get to that point. So a little bit awkward in that. And it's also all Vanguard skills. That means that you have only use for it to ride on Vanguard Circle. Uranus had the ability that he could also generate force markers while it was called to the rearguard circle, meaning it was a lot more flexible. And that's why a lot of people in the community are saying that Uranus is better than this VR. I'm not completely sold on that fact as well, because this does have a lot more value to ride it as a Vanguard, because you have more skills and more options available to you, and because Uranus can work as a rearguard circle, you actually might rather want to consider to put that unit on a rearguard circle instead of the Vanguard circle. So it opens up a lot more consistency. That's the major thing. This card allows for more consistency, but that's what we came to expect when the whole mechanic was revealed, that VR would allow for more consistency. So in that sense, I'm kind of disappointed that there wasn't really something interesting that worked with the extra more force markers, that it maybe had something in the similar line as the Astral Plane, that it could do something with a certain amount besides the Astral Plane. But it's just the same thing that we've seen with all the other skills. So Genesis is looking somewhat linear right now with all these skills. Yes, it has this amazing new mechanic, but the mechanic, it doesn't really do it besides having a bigger rearguard swing, and that's about it. So I'm curious if there's something else to be released that allows you to do something else or something more interesting, because it is a very one-dimensional deck that is pump out a lot of force marks underneath your Vanguard, do the thing, get a thing, swing with it big numbers, and hope they die because of it. So yeah, I'm somewhat curious if we're still going to get something else. Now, let's take a look at the Angel Feather one, because that is an interesting card. On the first glance, I was kind of disappointed at this card as well, as the skill didn't really sound that great to me, but after I took a better look at it, there are some really interesting things you can do with it. And I'm talking about Cosmo Healer Ergo Deal. And her skills, or its skills, I believe it's her, has 2 skills, and its first ability is Auto on Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost counter +1, choose up to 2 from all rear guards and put them into the damage zone. If 1 or more cards were put, this unit gets critical +1 until the end of turn. You and your opponent heal cards from the damage zone equal to the number of cards put into their damage zone with this effect. So basically you can put any 2 rear guards, either from you or your opponent or both, 1, and immediately slot them into the damage zone. And then if you put 2, you get a crit, so you hit for a crit, you then heal them. Major thing about this is that you put them face up. So you're going to allow yourself to countercharge as well, the same thing that we had with Metatron. But you also can allow your opponent to countercharge, and you want to usually put them into their circle, as you're going to see with the second ability. But also if you put them in their damage zone, you can then give them some countercharge if they survive the turn. And that might not be the thing that you want to do, as still some clans don't have access to countercharger, and giving them countercharge might actually help them quite a bit. I mean, giving Dimensional Police even more counterblast to work with cannot always be in your favor. So this does sound a little bit bad on that side, but when you take a look at the things that were already revealed, we have cards that interact and work when cards were put into your opponent's damage zone. So you can activate your skills this way. But also that you can work with your own field at the same time. You can give yourself damage and then heal them to give counter charge. But also, if you have a card in your damage zone, you cannot get it out of your damage zone, but you could get it out of your drop zone because you have the grade 2 that can superior cover drop zone. You have some way to fix that. But also a major thing about this is maybe we get a card that works or interacts by the fact that when it was put into the damage zone from the field. So you could activate those kind of skills, because we have nothing revealed for Angel Feathers as of yet. But it also has a second ability, I need to talk about it a little bit, and that's Auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of the battle for each face-up card in your opponent's damage zone. So this is where the putting them face up in your damage zone and your opponent is healing makes sense, as you gain a lot of power out of it. So if you use her skill and you put 2 cards from your opponents on the field, This one will swing in with 22 with a crit and potentially is sitting at 4 damage, so they need to guard that. But if they're sitting at 4 damage and they're all face up, this one will swing in for 32, meaning it is somewhat similar to Imperial Daughter. However, when a card is similar to Imperial Daughter, it might be outdated because Imperial Daughter is a quite old card at this point. But the fact that you can put cards from your opponent's field into the damage zone and then threaten them with a potential OTK turn, while actually that turn should be 3 turns away, is a pretty solid effect. But the major downside to the card is that it's an on-place effect. So you are a little bit limited in how consistent this you can do, but seeing how Age of Feathers work, this shouldn't be a major problem in their plan. And they can combine this with Metatron, or they can just go with Zero Heal. I'm curious what the other support is going to be, and that is still a major thing about this card. We honestly don't really know what all the cards for Age of Feathers are going to do. We don't really have a major reveals besides some commons, and maybe we have a double rare or something, but I cannot remember or recall on the top of my head. So we know that some cards will interact when cards were put into our opponent's damage zone, and this card will enable that. So I'm very curious of what the rest of Age of Feathers is going to be. There is a lot of potential in this card. The Genesis one is a little bit, in my opinion, disappointing, but it can also be that these leaks are either actually still not real, or the Bushiroad will change them. They can still do that as the set isn't released in Japan at all, and they can still change the skills. It's not the first time that they did that, because they did that with the commons for Grand Blue when there was an infinite loop. They did still change the skill before they sent it to the printer. So if this was originally their intent, I don't think they're gonna change it, because usually the VR is vital to their main strategy. You cannot really easily change the skill up to something else, but maybe it was a placeholder skill that they just gave to the English side for just in case it was leaked. So we still have to wait and see to the official reveals to make sure that these leaks are confirmed. But for now, take this information with it and try to think up what the clan can mean for you, how these skills might work. As far as we know, these are the actual skills, but we have to be a little bit skeptical that it can potentially still change. So with that said, that's everything for today. Usually I don't tend to do leaks. The last time that I did that basically fired back at me when I make the big fuss about the VDR artwork without a gold border for Violence Leader beginning this year. But apparently Bushiroad made a screw up with the image they uploaded to their Facebook page, and they uploaded the wrong picture without the gold border. So that one I need to put out, need to remove that video. I don't know how this one will work out, if this will keep his momentum, this video, or I need to put it down as well. But for us now, take this information how you want it. It looks to be legit. So yeah, they made a big mistake. They screwed up and they need to fix this so it doesn't happen again in the future. But in the meantime, let me know all your thoughts and opinions about these cards and these reveals or leaks. And yeah, let the discussion going, because there is a lot to talk about. And I'm curious what you guys think of these VRs for Age of Feathers and Genesis. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters for making this video and everything that's happening on the channel possible. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply do that by liking and subscribing, hitting the bell button to be updated, as well as sharing the video. But if you want to support us more directly, go to patreon.com/Vanguard Insider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one.